2020 is soon over, and what a challenging year it's been. It's been challenging for all of us, but what has happened to the IT industry? How has this year affected the IT industry, the pandemic? And what will happen in 2021? This and much more we will talk about during this Huawei Next Enterprise talk show. It's a 1-hour talk show, and we encourage you to write questions in the little box next to the screen that you're watching. And we'll take the questions at the end of the program. My name is Katarina Rolfsdotter Jansson. I will be the host. I am a program host, a moderator, and a public speaker, and I'm very excited to be doing this with fabulous guests coming in on this broadcast. I'll introduce the first guest. I'm just going to take a seat. And my first guest is Kjell A. Nordström. Fantastic guy. He's a MBA and PhD in international business, and also CEO and founder of the company Ebony Tower. He's also an author and a very, very well-renowned researcher in terms of multinational companies and global business. So let's give a warm welcome to Kjell A. Nordström. So, hi Kjell, how are you today?
I'm very fine, thank you.
Terrific. So, Kjell, this has been an extraordinary year for many purposes, many reasons, but obviously the pandemic. For me, it feels like I've been living and working in a pressure cooker. How about you?
Pressure cooker, yes, but I'm a scientist, a trained scientist, which also means that this is something very exciting because it's like a global experiment, 200 countries exposed to the same virus, and how do they all react? Because we all react a little bit different.
And you've been writing a book about this.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
It will be published at the end of the year, The Corona Express.
Great title.
Thank you. And the subtitle is actually The Time Machine, because now we have a little bit of a timeline, so we can see that this virus has, in a sense, transposed us into 2030, and in other aspects, taken us back to the year 2000 or 1995. And unfortunately, when it comes to the latter, it is poverty, and to fight poverty where we have lost 20 or 25 years in just 6 months. It is unbelievable and very tragic.
And today we're talking primarily about the IT world. How has, in your view, the pandemic affected the IT world?
It's an explosion. I think that's the only word that you can use in terms of valuation of the companies. Everything from the Zoom platform or the FANG companies, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Microsoft. 6 companies at some time there in the spring accounted for almost 1/3 of the New York Stock Exchange.
It's incredible.
Yeah, that's mind-boggling. And that's, of course, a reflection of the fact that we now fully use these technologies. We were forced to do it, but we do it.
And how about the effect that the pandemic has had on the globalization of the world?
Halted the globalization. Globalization has been the logic of the world after the Second World War. In principle, we started to open the world there after the war, slowly in the beginning. Then we formed the Cold Steel Union, later became the European Union. Global companies, global markets, and then a full stop right before Christmas 2019. Full stop. So globalization is not there, and I think it won't be back in the way that we're used to think of it. We will probably go into a de-globalization.
Do you see signs of this already?
Yes. You can see it if you scrutinize the numbers of investments, trade flows, you can see the dawn of a regionalization, a much more regionalized world in terms of thinking, traveling, business, and what have you. However, we will continue to share knowledge, continue to share music. The soft stuff we will share, the hard stuff go regional.
But how about this de-globalizations, the effect on the IT business?
I think that we can foresee that we will almost develop what you could called technological dialects, in the sense that we will have somewhat different technologies in various parts of the world. And I think we can see a little bit of a draft to that already today. I have studied capitalism, market economy for many years. And at the first glance, you go like, market economy is the same in every part of the world. It's not. The Russian form of market economy is very different from the German. And the German form of market economy is very different from the French or the American.
And this, of course, will reflect itself in the development of the IT solutions and the industry.
Yes, and now we will see the same happening to technology, that it will have a little bit of a twist to it, local twist.
And how about the effect of the pandemic on our productivity and our creativity?
Productivity, here we again, 6 months later, people today, I think most of us, remember what we said in March and April. Do you remember? We will lose 1/3 of the GDP. We will have unemployment rates of 20%. Did not happen. Did not happen. If we look at the Nordic countries, where we are today, we will come in, all of us, way below 5%, probably around 3% lost.
Unexpected.
We are much more robust than we thought. And technology is probably the prime suspect for why we are so robust.
How about the development of equality in terms of gender equality and other types of equality?
It seems like, this is the era of women. It was before the pandemic, but the time machine has also speeded up that process. Here in the Nordic countries, 59% more women now at the university level than men. 59. And in all areas, they are better than the men.
Even in technology?
Even in technology. And in all areas, they outperform. They do outperform. And they outperform from the age of 13. So something has changed here in the fabric of our societies. And we see it best when we look at the numbers and the practice, how we live our lives. You see it in cities, in city life.
How?
The city is it's a woman's environment, clearly so. The numbers are almost staggering. When you come out from the larger cities, it changes a little bit. But as long as you stay here in Stockholm, Copenhagen, New York, it's a woman's place.
And is this a regional aspect and effect, or do you see this globally?
Globally. And of course, we are a little bit progressive in some countries like the Netherlands. The Nordic countries are usually in the forefront. But interestingly enough, when we look at the numbers coming in from Istanbul, Turkey, same phenomenon. Lagging in terms of years, but it's the same phenomenon at the university level. Women study, and what the men do, we actually don't know.
And will this affect how we conduct business in the IT world?
Of course it will, because we will see the same wave, of course, of gender change sweeping through the system as we have seen in other industries. Technology has been lagging. Economics and business was lagging for a long time, but in the financial industry today, it's way over 50% women active in many segments of the market. Legal, look at lawyers and judges, and you know the drill. We are talking about way more than 50% today. Now the wave sweeps through the next industry, so absolutely.
Kjell, when we talked before about your book, for example, you talked about that we're also becoming more lazy. What do you mean by that?
No, we are lazy. Or let me put it like this. We are designed to conserve energy, human beings are, which on a daily basis we would say we are lazy. And this means that we don't change if we don't have to, most of us. We don't change until we have to. And now, when the pandemic hit our globe, we had to establish new habits.
Hence the time machine and the express
Yes,
title.
hence the time machine. And then it's a decent hypothesis that once these lazy human beings have changed, established a new routine, we are equally lazy to change back.
Well, that we know.
That we know.
So, in terms of change, how do you see this year in terms of hope for in terms of climate? Because the IT, of course, is extremely important in the transition to a carbon neutral society. We see the exponentiality, the possibilities, that the IT business gives to this transition. So, how do you see this year what has happened in terms of those hopes?
I think that business and industry has a little bit misunderstood climate change and the impact of climate change. It is probably the greatest transition ever in human history. Maybe it can compare to when we industrialized the planet in the 1850s.
And all the problems started, you mean, with the coal?
Exactly. And now we're going to back out of that, redesign the whole infrastructure, industrial infrastructure of this planet. The business opportunities in this change, well, it compares to nothing that a person alive now has experienced. And we are just in the beginning of that wave of industrial opportunities, business opportunities, that will be driven very much by technology, artificial intelligence, and other general purpose technologies, as I tend to call them.
And of course, the IT development and what we've this pressure cooker or time machine that we now don't travel as much because we can use the technology at hand and work from our homes.
Yes, the lazy ape has now understood that you can stay home and you don't even have to dress up in the morning.
No. You
11% of the Swedes work naked. That was
I saw that headline. Yes, and myself, I have a jacket that I can always put on if I realize that it's a Zoom call and not a phone
yes.
quick fix. But in terms of traveling, will we ever be going back to flying like we did before to meetings?
No, of course not. It won't happen for the simple reason that the lazy ape has now understood that you can do it using a technology instead. Of course we will go back to flying, but not to the same extent. Not that 2-hour meeting in London, the board meeting, and then you go out and have dinner and it takes like 48 hours for those 2 hours.
And you cannot wear your soft pants.
No.
Mjukisbyxor, as we say in Swedish.
Exactly.
That's not going to work.
No, and then you can't be naked.
It will be very inappropriate, of course. Yes. You compared in your when we talked about your book about these 20s to the roaring 20s.
Yes,
that
the
is the
roaring.
20s and the 1920s.
The 1920s was referred to as the roaring 20s because people were partying. You have probably seen films and read books about it. And why? Well, First World War. They had a pandemic, the Spanish flu. Zillions of people were lost in that pandemic. And then once people came out, or we came out of that, we partied like, yes, it was end of history kind of party. So the question is, of course, will we party once we are out of this?
Well, we're not really allowed to do it now. 8 people, that's not
But
not a
watch
big deal.
us once the restrictions are lifted. We will come out, and the cakes will be high, and the drinks will be big.
And now, of course, we do the partying and the after work business online. Have you tried this?
Yes, I have tried several of them. Yes. To have drinks on a Zoom platform, it works. I would say it works. There are some, of course, dimensions that you lose, but at least I think what you can do is, of course, that you can keep established contacts going, including your family and colleagues and what have you. It's more difficult to get to know someone that you haven't met before.
Of course.
And establish an in-depth. To seduce someone using Zoom, yet to be tried.
You can do the pheromone transition.
Yes, you probably have to send a sort of a snail mail with the
A T-shirt or something. You
T-shirt,
just sniff
pair
off,
of socks or something.
Ooh, not really. So to conclude this part of the program, Kjell, has the pandemic? I mean, obviously, we lost lives, many lives, and people have lost family members, and it's people are right now, as we speak, struggling. But in terms of transitioning the society, is it more plus than minus in your perspective? To a safer, more productive, more sustainable society?
You know, there is this concept of yin and yang. They tend to come together. Innovation and crisis tend to come together for us human beings. Without crisis, no innovation. So we can foresee that there is much more to come in terms of societal innovation. We have seen a little bit of it already, but mind you, there is much more to come. So, as always, crisis means development.
And what is your forecast for 2021?
2021 will be a year when we really start to bounce back, absolutely, but we will not go back to what it was before. We will take it will take us into a new galaxy of behavior, use of technology, traveling habits, and what have you. So, a year of development, a year of bouncing back, but not to what it was before.
And I introduced Jim. You have fabulous titles, and you're a renowned scientist, but you're also a owner of a theater.
A theatre, yes.
Yes.
A Shakespeare theatre, furthermore.
Of course, and that's the British lovely English comes out. But how does that maneuver? I mean, how do you maneuver a theater, manage a theater in these times?
You put it in a box and wait until you can unpack the box again. Probably you can unpack the theatre end of 2021. But what we have done meanwhile is that we have created the Shakespeare Globomobile, which is basically a mobile theatre where you with puppets do Shakespeare.
Oh.
Outdoors.
And where can people watch this?
This summer, in the island of Gotland, we will start, but we will probably tour the rest of Sweden too.
What a lovely idea.
Thank you.
Well, you'll be staying with us, obviously, Kjell, and yes. Let's introduce the next guest. And his name is René Rasmussen, and he is Enterprise Director from Denmark. And René, let's give him a warm welcome here, entering the stage. Please join us, René.
Hey.
Hello there. How are you today?
I'm very fine, thank you.
Wonderful. And we're decently corona safe distance, so we don't have to wear the masks. That's lovely. So René, you heard Kjell's reflections about how the pandemic has affected the IT industry. I mean, you're working in the industry. What are your responses and your reflections to what Kjell just talked about?
Well, I think in general what we can see is that since this is a disruption, I also think I heard you use that word. We actually see it as a disruption. And what we can see is a lot of companies had digitization strategies before. They were waiting a little about all these new technologies, but this actually accelerated it. Because now where people work from home, we're not sitting together when we do innovation. We're not sitting together when we have meetings, strategic meetings. We're not sitting together with customers. We have to see them from afar. That actually requires a lot of technology. And we see that a lot of investments are being done now in the infrastructure that can support connectivity. So you're connected all the time from anywhere. Collaboration tools are very big right now. And then, of course, cybersecurity. Because when you're not in a controlled environment in your office, then suddenly you're sitting from home or somewhere else. How do we ensure that nobody tampers with your information?
This, of course, was a very hot topic in the beginning of the pandemic, where major lapses were happening in this field. So, in terms of your business, Huawei's business, how has this been affected? In particular,
yeah. Well, of course, it's been affected very much in the sense that we get people investing in infrastructure. And since I believe we're the only infrastructure company that actually can deliver every infrastructure so you can have your service on top, that of course gives us more business. But it also requires us to work differently because we have the same challenges as our customers. And especially in the country I'm from, Denmark, where we are quite new. We've been there for 3 years in the enterprise segment, which I had. It's difficult to actually go to new customers and then do it virtually. Because there's a thing between us humans. We're very social. We would like to meet people, look them in the eyes, feel the presence of people. And it's very difficult to get new business if you don't have that trust. So in that sense, it's a little different. It's a little difficult for us, as it is for any company that are looking for new customers, because you cannot meet them face to face. I also think being such an international company as we are, we are in more than 170 countries, that some of our managers around the world, they also have to deal with their people in a little different way. We are also in countries where if you cannot see people, then by default they're probably not working. And then suddenly, if that's your management skill, that if you can see people, then they are working. If you can't, are they then working? Then they have to change their skills, right? So I think skill sets also need to be changed at the management level, definitely. But it also means that we have accelerated a lot of investment in our R&D and in our technology portfolio. First of all, of course, to help coming through the pandemic. Some of the technologies we have actually helps a lot in the healthcare industry. But we also have collaboration tools, and the latest one we introduced is a tool called Idea Hub. So we actually can assist people working in different locations as if they were together.
How does this work?
Well, the Idea Hub is a hub where you generate ideas, right?
Sounds
No,
marvelous.
yeah. Well, not exactly, but internally, I think we call it our 86-inch pad or tablet, because in theory, it can do everything you can on your pad or your tablet. So that means it's a huge whiteboard. So you can actually have a whiteboard standing in different locations, physically also across countries, where you can actually draw together. So when we talk about innovation, I can start a drawing and then somebody in Singapore can actually add to it and we can instantly see it. So you can use it as a huge whiteboard to actually generate ideas. It's also a video conference. We're actually doing 4K video conferencing on it, the same box. So that means that we have the best video conference, or at least the same technology as most others. And then finally, we can actually run all applications that you can run in Windows and on an Android. So actually, we support those two operating systems on it also. So you can start applications, share applications across. And I think in first quarter next year, we can actually also use iOS. So we will have 3 different operating systems. And that's actually very different from our competitors. First of all, they typically use 3 different systems to deliver these 3 functionalities, and they will not support 3 operating systems. So it's actually quite a fantastic tool that we are bringing to.
And it's up and running.
And it is up and running. Yes, we just launched it here a few months ago, actually.
So if Kjell wants to lecture, well, which he does a lot, and he wants to draw, he can do that.
Which I do a lot.
Yes, I know. You can do that on the same platform.
Yes, definitely.
Lovely. I'm looking forward to use it.
Definitely.
Terrific.
How many do you want?
Well, I need a couple to start with, but
Excellent. Are there any IT solutions that are, well, have been applied during the pandemic in terms of the health industry? I mean, there's been lots of discussions about the hope of AI and IT coming into the health industry, but what is actually up and running and working during this time?
I think before this pandemic happened, I think AI, machine learning, 5G, Internet of Things, a lot of people discussed it, but not many people actually knew how can we actually use it. And you can see the good and the bad here is that it has actually accelerated a lot for especially in the healthcare industry, because they really needed it, right? So if you want to make a temporary hospital somewhere where you can actually look at people, you can swab them to see whether they have corona, in areas where you don't have the infrastructure for it. There you can actually see a technology like 5G supporting. You can very, very quickly put up a 5G solution there. Our Wi-Fi 6 internally there can be applied very, very quickly. And especially AI and machine learning. And you can say in that sense, as a company, maybe we were a little lucky that we were actually, we have a Chinese owner, because in China, we very, very quickly worked together with the health authorities to actually train our equipment to look at CT scans. So you could actually, from a CT scan of a patient, see whether they had corona or not.
And an AI did
so
this.
That's what we used AI and machine learning for. But AI is not intellectual in the sense that you just give it something, then it knows everything, right? You have to train it.
Of course.
So what the good thing is then, if you go to China and you have 1.5 billion people, you very, very quickly have the volume to actually let the system recognize that all these pictures, when the doctor tells them, this is a corona patient because of this and that on this picture, then when you have so many pictures being shown, you very, very quickly learn the equipment and the application to do that. Now think about if you said, for instance, in the Faroe Islands, we would like to have that also, right? There are 50,000 people. If you want to train a system like that to actually recognize it, it's going to be impossible. The same for us in Denmark with
Reference numbers are
5
too low,
million,
yeah.
or Sweden with 10 million.
Nothing.
So here I think the good thing would be if we could collaborate actually across borders and then say, well, if you have trained so many and you have trained so many, then let's actually share this. So it's been used a lot, definitely.
Speaking of
And also cameras. Actually, we have cameras now that can actually detect whether you have a fever or not. So think about that going into a hospital. Then before you actually go in, you can actually see this person coming here actually has the fever. Maybe we should stop him or her and then go through another entrance. Airports, for instance. When people land or before they fly out, you have a fever, maybe we should check you. You should have a swipe before you actually leave. So there's a lot of technologies here that has been accelerated because of the pandemic. And I do believe that this will actually help us going forward, right? This is not a matter of a machine taking a decision for a doctor. This is support for a doctor. So instead of him having to go through all these pictures and talk to 10 other people before they say, yes, it's positive, then the system can support and say, there's a 95% likelihood that this person has corona. So he will just verify and then start treatment. So in that sense, we can actually, I believe, save more people than we do today.
And actually, you could argue that it's unethical not to use the technology now when it exists.
I completely agree.
You can argue.
So do you think this has sort of lowered the threshold for people accepting AI?
I think people see that there's actually a genuine possibility. I think what people are afraid of is that it's suddenly the machines running the people. But I've always said, and I also believe we in Huawei believe that it must always be the person that is the one in the middle. And then the technology is around the person. It's not the people around the technology. So we should always implement technology to help people, right? Whether we help them as individuals getting a better life, whether we help them at home, making it more easy to actually run your home, or it's at work. And if you look at our mission, that's actually what we say, right? We want to bring digitalization to every person, home, and organization for a fully connected, intelligent world, right? So in that sense, it actually fits perfectly with our mission.
And I asked Kjell about the effects of the pandemic on the exponentiality of using IT for solving problems that we are all facing now, the climate crisis primarily. How do you see that the work that you have done have been able to be speeded up by the pandemic?
Well, of course, all these investments that companies are doing now, right, that helps us a lot in Huawei, of course. And I also believe that all that happened here actually then will speed up the technology, as I said, right? It'll be much more accepted, and I do believe that for the future you have to look at these technologies as a company, because if you don't, some of your competitors are, and if they can get some support, where they differentiate themselves, then this is actually going to move them forward much faster than you will, and that's really what I believe for the future. You have to look at these technologies.
Many companies have been struggling hard during the pandemic, but not your company. How is that? You've been able to actually up your numbers.
Well, again, I believe that because we are an infrastructure company, because we have invested so much in R&D, especially around AI, machine learning, and this whole infrastructure, this communication, I think when this happened, we were probably in a situation where we have the technology, we have the solutions actually to support that. So by default, we are one of the companies you will look at if you want help within this area. So of course, that has accelerated. We have done a lot in the sense of actually giving these solutions without actually taking any money for it, just to help. But of course, we also hope in the future that since we have proved that it actually works, then somebody will buy it and not, as you say, then we're not going to use it anymore, right? And then I also believe that part of it is also in the pandemic. We see a lot, also I can see that in Denmark, a lot of companies are actually urging people to buy local. And since our home country is China, you can say that's the biggest home market we have, and there's 1.5 billion people out there. Then of course we have sold much more there than we had previously. And then I think it's in our DNA. In Huawei, it's a small company, and I don't think it's a big secret that we are quite a lot in the press right now, being challenged by this trade war and what have you. So I think we are very dedicated to strike back and show that we can do this. We can also do this. So this is another challenge on top of everything else that we have actually survived until now. And I believe we are sustainable, especially for all the R&D investments we make. You know, we will always be in people's minds because we spend so much money on developing this technology that we can use in so many industries, including healthcare.
Well, thank you very much, Renee. You will be staying on, of course. And let's now introduce the next guest. He knows a lot about innovations. He will be with us digitally, which of course is very practical and possible in these days. And the next guest name is Nico Vuoko, and he's from Silo AI. Silo AI is the largest Nordic AI lab that brings competitive advantages to product R&D with the world-class AI expertise. And let's give him a virtual applause.
Hi, hello everyone. Hi, nice to be here.
Hi, how are you today?
Yeah, very well. It's the Finnish winter over here, but we've been accustomed to that already.
Yeah, what can you do, huh? We have to just hang in there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a new year quite soon. Nico, in terms of what you listened to us talking about here previously, Shell talked about us being lazy. What is your reflection on that one?
Yeah, I think it's certainly true. Like humans are lazy. That's part of our nature. But there's also the other side where we actually forever discontent. Like no matter how far we go as a society, there's always something we want more. So we're always discovering new wants. So we'd be always like at Silo also like figuring out ways to take AI into new major use cases. Like, okay, how can the human mind do something that is more creating or fulfilling than what they are doing at the moment? So AI is still like in its very early days as a technology, and it'll take multiple decades of like incremental automation all across different ways that we use it in our lives. But over time, we will actually also discover like new ways to reorganize our life and society when we have new technology available over there. So AI will it'll be transforming the way we work, but I don't think it will be sort of changing the human nature any more than any previous technology has done. So I wouldn't expect it to turn us any lazier than our prehistoric predecessors did.
So Nico, in terms of human-centered AI, that's what your company is stating to be all about. Can you explain more about what is actually human-centered AI?
Yeah, I mean, that really goes back to the increasing role of AI and large-scale impact that AI is making, and also like even further what it's expected to make in the future. So it's really a fundamental question, like how do we deal as a humankind with a foreign kind of intelligence that in some ways is also superior to us humans, but also it behaves really in unexpected ways, unfamiliar ways in different situations. So it's one thing that we simply can't really succeed in getting the benefits out of AI unless we build it with all the with keeping in mind all the people that are using, influencing, and experiencing those solutions. But there's also the other side where what kind of a world do we actually want to build over the long term? So is it a world where technological progress is paramount and is the meter with which we measure ourselves? Or is it more of a world where we as humans are optimizing for the human experience in our daily lives? So I suppose for us, it's certainly the latter matter that we care about. So it's not just about technology, but actually how can we improve the human life overall?
So Nico, in terms of innovation, there's often spoken that there is a very long wait and long time before, between R&D and when you actually can sell the product. What is the case from your perspective?
Yeah, it's always the same thing, and it depends on a lot of things. One thing is always like the accessibility of information through media. How do you popularize science, and what is the expectations there? And there's this Amara's law, which actually fits really well over here, that we as humans really tend to overestimate the progress in the near term. We expect things to happen immediately when you just hear about it first. But then again, we also underestimate how far we can actually take it in the long term. So when we hear about the latest new AI models in the news, it's still a number of steps away from actually having that technology in a shape that can be reliably deployed in the real world. So that's for sure. And there's also this tendency that as AI advances, those advances are actually often driven by hardware. So it's not about discovering new ways to turn numbers into other numbers, but it's actually the advances in the underlying hardware that makes new things possible with the AI algorithms. And so naturally, it's not just about deploying this new software, but it's deploying these huge layers of underlying hardware. And that is going to take a long, long while. So how should one really approach this question is it's always about trust. Like how do you build the trust in the technology? How do you build the trust on really delivering it in a large scale production? So that's been also our focus there.
Nico, we've spoken primarily, Kjell has been talking about the time machine and the Corona Express, which is the title of his book. How does that ring to you? I mean, has it been a more of a express development from your perspective?
For this, yeah. Yeah, it's been compressing a lot of things, really. And I think there's a general phenomenon actually behind it where a lot of budgets have been slashed, a lot of non-essential investment has been postponed. So that's been the let's say the more mechanic other side of the coin out of what is the human suffering out of the pandemic. But then there's also been a big shift in the minds of people in the past few years. So what we see in the AI field, it's really been changing compared to what it was a few years ago. So previously it was seen more as an incremental accelerator of whatever we were working on. But now more and more people are actually seeing it as how dramatically the world will actually change once we start automating everything around us with machine learning. What happens when everything we touch during the day is actually machine learned? So this is sort of changing in a way that AI itself is moving to the front of the line in many priorities. So it's not only an incremental accelerator anymore, it's an essential element of being a part of the world of tomorrow. And so while I think we sort of expected that, okay, this is going to be a difficult year for us as well, but actually it's been a bit the other way around. There's been a time machine in people's needs and wants also in this field. Like we need it now.
And Nico, if you do a forecast for 2021 in terms of your profession, AI, what can you tell us?
Yeah, there's a lot of different trends ongoing there. Like one thing is naturally that the advances in, let's say, computing connectivity, it's taking AI into new places like embedded and 5G environments. It's multiplying its impact to the real world. Second, it's also that the society's spotlight is turning more and more towards AI. So as we're making a bigger impact to the real world, naturally, and justifiably so, there's more and more questions like, okay, what is okay? What isn't okay? And so that's also an implication that once AI goes closer and closer to the users, so it's not just in the cloud anymore, but it's really next to you. It has access to more critical data, to more personal data, and then that brings into question this topics like AI privacy, safety, security, and ethics. So that's been a big question, and certainly will be rising further on as well. Perhaps other than that, I think there's also been this clear change in what is AI actually in different use cases. So it's not just a generic pile of algorithms anymore, but it's getting more and more specialized per industry and use case. So for example, this recent AlphaFold example, where there was a multi-year progress from generic methods far away into custom design for that specific problem of protein folding prediction. And I think that'll definitely be happening further and further. So next year, there'll definitely be more cases where a highly specialized AI model will be solving a totally new kind of problems in specific industries. So I think these are sort of like, I'm not sure really if they're going to be like 2021 trends, like specifically. Naturally, that's something that's increasing over the long period. But maybe closer to home, it's sort of one thing naturally that so this time machine has really been helping us. So we really multiplied in our size this year. So maybe one reliable prediction for the next year would also be that we're going to repeat it the next year as well.
Well, that's wonderful news for you, of course. Nico, in terms of globalization, we talked about deglobalization here. Do you agree? And how does that affect your company?
Yeah, it really depends on like how do you consider globalization? It's also a question like is it for leisure or is it for work? So in any case, we're always like seeking human contact when traveling and new technologies making that easier. But then again, like technology and also AI, it's becoming constantly more and more complex. It's requiring wider and wider collaboration, which isn't possible anymore in a local scale. You have to do it in a global scale. So we are becoming more and more interdependent globally. We cannot achieve things without each other. But then again, actually, more and more bigger part of that cooperation will definitely going to occur digitally. So in a leisure way, we're seeking experiences. So and I think the demand, like as I said, like we're always like discontent as human beings. There's always something better that we are looking for, and the best possible experiences. Those are definitely going to stay face to face for a long time to come, and that's not going to disappear.
Well, thank you very much, Nico from Finland, and best of luck with your continued work with your company. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And let's now introduce our next guest. We have one more chair here on the stage, and let's introduce Tim. Tim is CTO of Synergia. Please, Tim Ljunggren. Let's give him an applause. Oops. So, Tim, CTO of Synergia.
Yes.
And you work in a different type of IT business, energy.
Yeah.
Which, of course, this time of the year when we use so much Christmas lights and we just need lights all over the place, it's extra relevant. But in terms of your business, so it's mostly sustainable energy.
Yeah.
Tell us, what does your company do?
I mean, I realized on the way here that we are so dependent on energy. It was a power outage on the train on the way here, so we are definitely dependent, as we all know. It has been extremely interesting to hear these discussions regarding the IT industry and the energy industry, and I think they are very well interconnected, or they are becoming more and more interconnected during these times, actually.
And we talked a lot about the Corona Express and the time machine. How's that affected? And tell us a little bit more about your work, please.
Yeah, the time machine was a really good expression for this. I think that the time machine might have pushed us even further in the future than we actually realize. If we take a European example, that we are right now pushing the coal industry out of business in many occasions. So things are actually happening, and it's happening faster than we expected. The energy here. I think one really interesting thing here regarding energy and what you have discussed is that I would not say that I'm in the solar business, but I will say that maybe it's not only solar that we're speaking about now. It's like the one trend in solar is that we're speaking about energy. Like it has been a much broader term for not only energy. We speak about interconnection. So yeah, the decentralization that we have seen it's staggering.
And you work with solar, and in your business you use AI. Please tell us.
Yeah, so we're in solar, electric vehicles, and storage. And I was thinking on before this event, like how do we use AI? And I realized not that much. But then I had a second thought, and I realized it's quite a lot actually, and it's in quite many different levels. We speak not only in different hardware on the products that we're selling. We're seeing AI in terms of when we're dealing with trainings and education with our customers and also internally. So AI is not influencing only in the smallest sense, but also on the bigger sense of what we're doing.
And you listen to Nico here talking about his perspective of the human-centered AI. How does that ring? How does that ring to you when you hear those explanations?
Yeah, as he was describing that we currently don't have that AI that can do everything right out of the box. We still have a long way to go, both in terms of hardware and software. But we are. I would like to see AI today as more of like driving a car. When you're sitting in a car today, in an old car, you don't even you need to put on the wipers if the rain starts coming. But in a modern car, that's done automatically. And many more things are added to this car that we are seeing that in the future. Yes, we will definitely have a self-driving car with no steering wheel and everything will be fully automatic. But right now we are not exactly there, or at least not in broader terms. So yeah.
And what trends do you see from your perspective from 2021?
Yeah, on the global level, we definitely see the huge increase of renewable energy in the Nordics, mostly wind energy, of course. The solar is growing, and the interesting thing here is that we are in a business. The solar industry, for example, has grown 70% each year for the last 10 years, but still nobody realized we have solar power in Sweden, and it's because it's growing from a so low level. But I think that last year we definitely see that we are seeing in the graphs, we are seeing something, and that trend will become stronger and stronger. So we will have more renewables, of course, both in terms of solar and wind. We see that it has not become a renewable energy is it's not goods for only the people that are interested in technology or that are caring for the environment. It's something for everybody. We will see solar panels on many more homes in not only Sweden but all over Europe and the world the coming decades.
And now we see more and more car developers doing the vehicle to grid possibility.
Yeah.
So you can actually have solar and charge your car and use the car as a battery.
I'm pretty sure that one of our large, if we see the building as a system, we will see one of the biggest resources will be parked on the parking lot, and that it's not only for transportation from A to B. It's for supplying services to the grid. It will be utilizing as much renewable energy as possible. It will serve so many more things than just being a vehicle for transportation. So yeah, that's an extremely interesting topic.
And just a few years ago, it was almost impossible to find a car that actually had the storage capacity. So I've been driving a full electric for 5 years, and now I'm actually turning from a car that doesn't have the vehicle to grid and the storage to one that has. So I'm excited. Solar panels coming up. So Renee, in terms of trends,
Yes.
from your perspective, what can we expect from 2021?
Well, maybe a little contrary to what my Finnish colleague there said, I actually believe that it's going to be much faster. We will see AI and machine learning used much more broadly in the companies. And the reason is, in ancient times, let's say from 2019 and back, you saw very few front runners and a lot of followers, right? So let's see them try and do it, and then we'll try and copy it afterwards. But I think now that we've seen it actually works, especially in the healthcare here, and we can see that that when we talk about autonomous driving, that there's so many investments going into that. I think there will be many more companies that are actually going to be front runners because they have now seen what they potentially can use it for, and that the technology is there. So I think we will see more front runners, more investments in AI and in machine learning that we've seen today. I also believe that many more companies will invest in solutions, infrastructure that will cater for this collaboration when we are not physically close to each other, and connectivity, right? So, and then I think a lot of companies will also make sure that they go into the cloud. And the reason I say that is it's much easier to scale in the cloud. So if you suddenly have a new pandemic, because I don't believe this is the last one we've seen, then how do you then make sure that your supply chain, if you have remote locations, you can actually run those systems out there without being able to fly people? And the only way you can do that is running it somewhere from central. So you have specialists sitting in central, and then locally you will have, let's call it normal people like myself who doesn't understand a damn thing about technology. Yeah. And then they will then with cameras, whatever, show the people central, this is what it's doing. And then from central you will take the action. So I think we will see a lot of investments going into the cloud, and a lot of them will actually be outsourced. It's not going to be your own cloud. It will be pay as you go. So again, if you go into a pandemic and you say, well, we have to scale down here, we have to scale down here, we have to scale down here, and we have to upscale here, then you can actually do that, and then you pay as you go, right? So I think that's some of the technologies and some of the investments we're going to see in 2021 already.
Thank you, René. Kjell, I'm curious to your response to this forecast.
A big yes, yes. We are moving in the direction of a huge, not global pod of knowledge. Think Spotify, all the music that we have created in one pod. You pay 49, crowns here, or €5, you have access to the pod. Now we do the same thing with knowledge. Huge pod, everything we know about medicine, special applications of medicine in the pod. You pay, you use, and you pay and go, exactly as you say. So yes, and the thing is, we will do it next year, because once we now have the smell of it, and some have tried, we will be there. We will be there on a grand scale.
But this, of course, puts very high demands on security and on trust, maybe?
Yes. Define problems. As soon as the problem is defined, we human beings have shown over and over again that we can solve it. It's when we cannot define the problem, the reason. What is the problem with terrorism, global terrorism? What is the problem? But if we knew the problem, we could solve it. But here we know what the problem is, and then we can fix it.
But in cybersecurity, right, where we have this technology, again, we use AI, we use machine learning in some of our security products. Maybe they're not the most popular as the situation is right now. But we also have to realize that technology can be used for something extremely good, which is protect yourself in this sense, your connectivity, your data, whatever. But we also have to realize that the same technology is used by the people who actually wants to gain access. And if we look at the amount of people trying to protect us in a company, how many is that? 2, 3, 4 people maybe you have? And how many millions are sitting out there actually trying to gain access? So it can be used both ways, right? So I think we have to do much more together, collaborate together, finding cybersecurity solutions, and sharing a lot more information that we do today.
Yeah,
because without doing that, we're gonna lose, I think, actually, to some of these guys, because they have the technology just as we have.
Yes, they do.
Tim, from your perspective, working in the energy business, how does this ring?
Yeah, this is extremely interesting. If we see, for example, let's take a battery. A battery itself is very interesting for a homeowner. But for a grid perspective, we need thousands and tens of thousands of batteries. If somebody will have the possibility to throttle or to brake all 10,000 batteries, we definitely need IT solution that we trust, and we need some sort of security systems on top of things, and we also need smart algorithms that are controlling the behavior, and because we're letting the algorithms decide how and when we should charge or discharge all of those batteries, for example. So it's spot on.
And this is happening fast.
It's happening faster than we have ever expected.
Actually, it redefines the whole concept of defense, both for a country and for another institution like a company. And I was talking to an American general not very long ago, the chief of staff in the US. I said, what keeps a general awake these days? And he goes like, cyber. Just one word, cyber. Everything else, we know how many rockets they have. We know how many tanks they have. We know the capacity. Cyber, we don't know. It makes him like, I don't know.
But we have to think differently. I was in. I used to be the CIO in the Maersk Group, which is a huge company also, right, globally. And before we were hit, and it's probably known to most people because we went out broadly and said we're hit by this virus, right? We were hit big time. Everything was down, to be quite honest. And we had to rethink the way we looked at cybersecurity. That at all points in time in Maersk now, they believe that there's somebody on the network who shouldn't be there. So how do you then protect yourself? You have to protect each asset and you have to protect each piece of information. So that's how they try and actually establish their solution to that. You cannot say that there's nobody in my network. There will be people in the network all the time. And that's the perception.
And it's the same thing in the energy sector. We are speaking about the energy system in a whole, but if in smaller sense, it's in one building. If there is a power outage, what will happen with everybody? We don't have electricity. But if we have a microgrid, then we could protect ourselves. We will be more resilient. So many similarities between ICT and energy, of course.
Resilience
Yeah, I
is
think as
key.
well.
Yes, please,
Yeah, I
Nico.
think as well. It's been a lot of this same progress all over the place in different industries for cybersecurity. I think it's been interesting to see how automotive has actually been approaching that as we've been working there, building AI for automotive, and there it's been highly like starting from regulations. The industry itself has built a lot of regulations on how to do this in a safe manner. And then for a field that's previously been as technologists, they've mostly been interested in let's build cool stuff. But then suddenly you end up in this field where there's safety is highly critical thing. And you really have to be mindful of what you do so that it stays safe, even when there's adversaries around. But these automotive self-regulations have really, although it has taken a lot of time to get there, but then when they got there, then it's a really nice place to be, where you can actually develop novel technology while having a pretty good confidence that it's going to stay safe. And I think energy is pretty much in a similar stage right now. There's a huge need for specialized novel technology, but there's also huge risks in if that opens access to unwanted people. So it's probably going to end up in a similar manner where actually the industry itself is going to figure out a way, how do we work things out together in a general fashion so that we can reuse components across the field, and that way prove that, okay, we are responsible enough to use this new technology.
Thank you, Nico. I'm going to see if we have some questions from the viewers. Do we?
Yes,
we do.
yes, we have received quite a few questions. A lot of them are about AI. And one question here is, the development in IT is moving extremely fast. What kind of AI solutions do you think will be used in our everyday life in 10 years?
Is it addressed to somebody specific, or we
No,
just take
so
whoever is the quickest?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, I can
Nico.
get started first. So it's going to move away from IT systems eventually, but the world is full of, for example, electronics. So every single piece of electronics that you are using in your life, right now, how it behaves whenever you are using it, it behaves the way it was configured somewhere in a factory, perhaps 10 years ago by some engineer. And they have no clue about your life specifically. But how would you see if every single piece of electronics would actually constantly adapt to your way of life, how you work together with people around you, whether it's your family or your colleagues? I think that's still something that is a new adaptation needed in our minds. We are not ready for that yet.
Thank you, Nico. Renee, you wanted to comment?
Oh yes, yes. I want to come. I think that one of the things that's going to happen very, very soon is that our home will be controlled more or less by one gadget, whether that's a mobile phone, wearables, or whatever. Everything will happen there. We will have. Some will say fortunately, some will say unfortunately, our life on this piece of equipment. Right? It will be our identification together with us as people, whether that's facial recognition or whatever biometrics. But it will control everything. And that's going to happen not that far away from now.
Well, thank you. We have so much to talk about here, and we had more questions, but we're running out of time, unfortunately. So we have to say thank you to the speakers, and thank you to Nico from Finland, and of course, thank you to the viewers. And let's look forward to a healthier 2021. And let's go into this holiday season with clean hands and a happy and innovative mind. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.